Okay, guys, tonight we wake up somewhere different, a little colder, a little more tense. You're in Berlin, but not the postcard kind with cozy cafes and careless chatter. You're in 1930s Nazi Germany, where even the air feels suspicious. Your alarm clock doesn't buzz, too early for that kind of luxury. But you stir anyway, wrapped in scratchy sheets and the kind of silence that says, "Be careful what you say today." The light filtering through your window is grey. You don't know if it's fog or smoke from the nearby coal burners, but it makes everything look like it's waiting for something. Like the city itself is holding its breath. You sit up, glance around the room. Wallpaper peeling slightly near the window. A photo of the Kaiser still tucked into the corner of the mirror, though no one really admits to that anymore. Your flat is small, 2 rooms if you squint, and you share it with more people than there are chairs. Rent stable, but prices keep shifting like the ground beneath a train. Your slippers are cold. The kettle groans on the stove. Someone's already moving upstairs. You recognize the boots from their rhythm. You pull back the curtain, just a little. Outside, the street yawns into another grey morning, but the walls are waking up too. Posters, freshly glued, shout words like Ein Volk, Ein Reich, Ein Führer. The same face stares back at you from every corner. Square jaw, perfect hair, those intense eyes that don't quite look anywhere, but always feel like they're looking at you. It's like the city has been wallpapered in obedience. You've got work soon, but there's a moment before it all starts. Just you, the window, and the muffled sound of leather soles against pavement. It's hard to tell which footsteps belong to postmen and which to patrols. In the apartment below, Frau Müller is already shouting at her son to hurry, again. You've lived above them for years. Used to be you heard music sometimes, gramophone on Sundays, jazz even. But now, jazz is forbidden. Degenerate music, the posters said. American, Jewish, subversive. So now it's just silence or speeches. Usually speeches. You toast bread. Well, something like bread. It crumbles when you breathe near it. Butter's become a memory. So you settle for lard, cold and tasteless, but it fills the hole. Outside, a man bikes by, newspaper strapped to his front. You can already guess what the headline says, even before you squint through the glass. Germany triumphant. You've been triumphant for years, apparently. Your wife joins you in the kitchen, hair tied back, apron on, tired smile that doesn't quite reach her eyes. She's already thinking about ration coupons, your daughter's shoes, which no longer fit, and how to stretch cabbage into 4 different meals. You ask if she slept. She lies, kindly, and your son, 8 years old, comes out, shirt neatly tucked, and raises his arm in a salute so instinctive it chills you. Heil Hitler, he says with pride. His school taught him that every morning, before math, before grammar, before anything. You ruffle his hair, trying not to think too hard about how early conditioning becomes belief. There's a knock at the door. Just the milk delivery. But your stomach flips anyway. Because in this place, knocks are never just anything. You open the door too quickly, smile too wide, and still, every muscle hums like it's holding onto a secret. You walk to work. Your factory job isn't glorious, but it's stable. Mostly metalwork now. Tools and parts you don't fully understand, but are told are for the good of the fatherland. No one says what you're making exactly, just that it must be perfect, efficient, German. On your way, you pass the newsstand. A man browses the latest issue of Der Stürmer. You see the usual, a grotesque caricature of a Jewish man on the cover. The kind of image that sticks in your head like a stain. You used to flinch. Now you just look away. Historians still argue whether ordinary Germans believe these cartoons or simply let themselves believe because disbelief was too dangerous. You pass two women on the corner talking softly. One of them laughs too loudly. Her friend hushes her immediately. "Not here," she mutters. And both go quiet. It's a strange kind of music. Conversation that constantly cuts itself off. A quirky detail for you. The regime even tried to control hairstyles. Women were encouraged to wear modest braids or buns. No French waves, no glamour. And men? Short, sharp, obedient. Hair, like everything else, must not rebel. At the factory, someone's missing. His locker's still there, half open. But no one says anything. You just move one locker down and punch in. Time doesn't stop here. It repeats. Like a rhythm you're too tired to change. Your manager speaks softly now. Too softly. He used to joke. Not anymore. He keeps a portrait of Hitler on the wall above the time cards. Just to be safe. By the time you leave, the sun is already setting, early this time of year. The shadows stretch longer, like fingers reaching for something they can't quite grab. You walk home a little faster, not because of anything specific, just because it's better. And as you lie in bed that night, your son already snoring across the room, you wonder how long this will last. This careful walking, this constant acting. You think about the jokes you used to tell, the music you used to hear, the people you used to talk to without first glancing around. You don't sleep easily anymore, but then again, who does? The next morning, the city doesn't so much wake up as it tightens. You feel it when you open the window, and the cold slaps your face like it's checking your papers. Something about the air. It's not just the weather, it's the watching. You head downstairs and pass Herr Gruber, the janitor. He used to chat about the weather, ask about your kids, maybe curse the tram schedules. Now he just nods. His party pin catching the morning light. It's always on, even on laundry days. That tiny red circle on his lapel gleams like an all-seeing eye. You nod back with a smile that feels like it belongs to someone else. As you walk the street, you notice people noticing each other. It's not overt. It's quieter than that. A glance held just a bit too long. A head tilted slightly when someone mutters in a queue. Even coughs sound suspicious now. Conversations are like walking on cracked ice. No one wants to be the one who falls in. You catch yourself watching too. That's how it starts, doesn't it? You think, I'd never turn someone in. But then you also think, I'd better not get caught with them either. And just like that, your morality shifts 2 centimeters to the right. The Reich isn't just in the laws. It's in the looks, in the silences, in the space between questions and answers. No one needs to arrest you if your neighbor will do it first. You stop by the grocer. Frau Steiner is arguing over cabbage weights, her voice sharp but scared. Her husband was taken for questioning last week. For the record books, they said. She hasn't heard back. She still buys apples though. You don't ask why. Inside, the shelves look normal at a glance. But you've been here long enough to know what's missing. Coffee, real butter, chocolate, gone or reserved for someone higher up the food chain. Literally. What's left is rationed, labeled, registered. You don't choose dinner anymore. You calculate it. The clerk smiles too broadly. You remember when he used to flirt with customers? Now his eyes dart toward the back office every few seconds. The manager, probably party now. Everyone is, unless they're not, in which case they're careful. As you leave, you bump into an old friend, Stefan. You played football together in school. He looks older now, thinner. You exchange pleasantries, weather, rations, maybe a safe joke about the tram system breaking down again. But when you mention that you haven't seen your coworker Carl in a few days, Stefan freezes, just for a second. Then he says, maybe he's traveling, in a tone so neutral it could pass for white noise. You know. He knows something. He knows you know. He knows something. But neither of you will say it. The silence isn't awkward. It's armor. Historians still argue whether Germans knew about the worst of what was happening, how much of it filtered down into everyday lives. But knowledge is a slippery thing. Sometimes it's not about what you know. It's about what you let yourself know, what you refuse to question, because the answers hurt too much. You walk home through Alexanderplatz. It used to be full of buskers, teenagers, stray dogs. Now it's uniforms, banners, boots. Every flag is perfectly clean. Every march perfectly timed. It's like the city's been choreographed. And there it is again. That uncanny sense that everyone's performing. Even you. You glance up at a lamppost where a loudspeaker hums softly, ready to blast party news at any moment. You've heard them switch on at odd hours. Announcements about harvests, arrests, victories. Sometimes music, always controlled. And here's a strange little tidbit. Nazi Germany was obsessed with soundscapes. Radio trucks drove through towns blasting patriotic music and speeches. The idea was to fill the silence before you could. By afternoon, a patrol walks by your apartment block. 3 men in uniform. One of them has a clipboard. That clipboard could be anything. A census, a map, or a list with your name on it. You watch from behind the curtain, heart thudding. They pass without stopping. But now you can't relax. Your wife is mending socks. Your daughter is practicing handwriting at the kitchen table, copying phrases like Mein Führer and Vaterland. You think of the bedtime stories you used to tell her. Fairy tales, castles. Now she brings home stories about brave soldiers and heroic martyrs who report enemies of the Reich. You smile and nod. What else can you do? Later, as dusk crawls in, there's a knock on the neighbor's door. Not yours. Still, you freeze. 3 short raps, too formal to be casual. You listen. A muffled conversation. Then boots on the stairs. Someone is taken. Again. The building doesn't react. A baby cries. A dog barks once. No one asks who. No one wants the answer. You sit by the radio and fiddle with the dial. Every station sounds the same. Triumph, glory, order. Until you hit static. One precious sliver of uncontrolled chaos. You listen to that for a moment, just to remember what freedom sounded like. Your wife joins you. You don't speak. You just sit there. 2 people on a couch pretending not to be afraid. Because being afraid is dangerous too. Fear leaks, and someone might notice. Outside, a car passes. Headlights off, then quiet. You go to bed and stare at the ceiling. There's a crack there, shaped vaguely like a bird. You used to joke about it, our pet eagle. But tonight, even that feels risky. The ceiling crack watches you back, and once again, you remind yourself, tomorrow, you'll say less. You'll walk slower. You'll smile more. Maybe that'll be enough. You wake to static. Not the comforting kind from a rainy window or a distant train, but that soft electric hiss that means the radio is about to speak. You don't turn it off. You never do. Not anymore. It crackles, then clears, and a clipped, assured voice cuts through. Guten Morgen, meine Damen und Herren. Today, the Reich continues its glorious path towards strength and unity. You butter half a slice of bread with lard, again, and let the voice wash over you while you chew. It's not meant to inform you. It's meant to shape you. The radio's not a box of news. It's a faucet. Dripping ideology every hour, every day. That's what it does now. That's what it's for. The German people were among the first in the world to have the widespread radio access. It was considered a modern marvel. Cheap sets called Volksempfänger, people's receivers, were sold at reduced prices or given away. Nearly every home had one. But you couldn't tune out. You couldn't even tune around. These radios were built with limited range. You hear what they want you to hear. Everything else is static. And yes, before you ask, the government does check. Rumors float through the tenements. Someone's cousin caught listening to a foreign station. Someone's boss vanished after bragging about hearing the BBC. You've never verified the stories. You don't need to. Their purpose isn't to be true. Their purpose is to be believed. At work, the factory radio is bolted to the wall. It broadcasts speeches during lunch and patriotic marches during downtime. No one dares complain. When the machine squeals the opening notes of Horst Wessel Lied, every man stands, you stand too. Even if your hands are covered in grease, even if you want to throw a wrench through the speaker, you smile, you sing. You find it strange how quickly the propaganda's words start to feel like your words. Not because you agree, but because repetition has weight, like water dripping into a bucket. Sooner or later, the bucket overflows. Germany is strong again. We are unified. Our enemies surround us, but we are pure. You hear these lines so often you say them in your sleep. You don't remember when that started. Historians still argue whether propaganda alone could have built such loyalty, or if the fear and hope behind it mattered more. Maybe it's not either or. Maybe it's both. A fringe detail for you. Some of the propaganda films used actors from abroad, dubbed in German, to look like fake foreigners making threats. The enemy at the gates was often fabricated frame by frame. Literal fiction edited into national fear. At home, the radio is your furniture's soundtrack. It plays during dinner. It whispers when you dust. Sometimes you swear it speaks even when it's off. You've caught your children parroting entire slogans word for word with eerie calm. Your daughter draws a picture of a blonde girl holding a flag. She says it's her. She got a gold star in class for singing the national anthem the loudest. You nod and pat her head. She's smiling so big it hurts to look at her. But then your son asks, "Papa, what's a traitor?" You almost choke on your soup. What did you say? My teacher said we must always report traitors. You say something vague. You change the subject. You smile again. Because that's what's safest now. Later that night, long after the kids are asleep, you look at your wife and say, "We have to be careful what we say, even here." She just nods. You don't need to explain. She's already heard the neighbor's child recite party phrases through the wall. You remember when the radio used to play opera, when you could listen to jazz or news from Vienna or Rome. Now, even silence sounds suspicious. Sometimes, you keep it on just so no one wonders why it's off. The next morning, the broadcast includes a list of traitors of the state. Names, neighborhoods, not specific addresses, but close enough that you recognize a few. You don't react. You never react. But inside your stomach sinks. One of them worked at your old factory. One of them lived across from your cousin. You wonder what they said, or didn't say, or who said something about them. You feel a weight in your chest. Not guilt, not yet. Something blurrier. Survival has edges. At lunch, a colleague jokes under his breath about how the radio must have ears. No one laughs. He realizes too late. He shrugs and returns to his sandwich, eyes on the table. Later you notice him wiping sweat from the back of his neck. You don't say anything. Neither does anyone else. You pass a bookstore on your walk home. The windows display only state-approved titles now. Hitler's Mein Kampf in bulk, alongside treatises on race, war, purity. No more poetry, no more foreign novels, just rows of ideology in hardback. And there's a new poster up beside the shop. The Führer speaks for you. Listen, learn, obey. You realize something as you stare at that poster. It's not about whether people believe it anymore. It's about what happens if they don't. Back home, you find your son humming a patriotic tune he learned in school. He doesn't even notice. It's as natural as breathing now. Your wife cooks in silence. The radio drones on in the background. A monotone newsman recites agricultural quotas and glorious speeches and enemy threats. His voice never cracks, never changes tone. That night you try to turn it off, just for a moment, just to hear the room breathe. Your wife touches your hand. Leave it on, she says softly. And you do, because what if someone hears the silence? You're folding laundry when your daughter brings home her latest school assignment. A short essay titled Why the Führer Loves the German Youth. She's proud of it, too proud. Her handwriting loops obediently across the page. A perfect script beneath a swastika stamp in the corner. You read it aloud, trying not to flinch at the phrasing. We must be pure in mind and body. We must honor our race. The Führer is like a father to all good Germans. She watches you read, beaming. You tell her it's very neat. And it is. Terrifyingly neat. School used to be about poems and arithmetic. But now your child recites military ranks faster than she can do long division. In class, they don't just learn history. They live the rewritten version. Germany didn't lose the Great War. It was betrayed. Jews didn't just exist. They corrupted everything. And Hitler isn't just a leader. He's a symbol. A destiny. You go in for a parent meeting once a month. The headmaster wears a brown uniform and gives you a checklist of patriotic behaviors. Punctuality, clean boots, proper salutes, respect for the party. You nod at all the right times. Say you're grateful. You don't ask about books that quietly disappeared. You don't ask about the classmate who stopped showing up. No one asks. Historians still debate whether Nazi education was more about indoctrination or obedience. But standing in those classrooms, watching your child chant slogans in perfect rhythm, you realize it doesn't matter. Either way, they win. You pick up one of your daughter's textbooks while she's asleep. Inside are stories, fairy tales rewritten to praise the German bloodline, math problems involving airplane bomb capacities, essays asking children to describe how they would report suspicious behavior. One question reads, what would you do if your parents said something un-German? A. Correct them. E. Report them to your teacher. C. Remain silent and remember it for later. All three are wrong. All three are right. And here's a strange little nugget of Nazi pedagogy. In biology, kids now learn racial science. Charts about skull shapes, diagrams of bloodlines. They're taught to spot inferiority. You remember your daughter coming home one day, pointing at her nose in the mirror, asking if it was the right kind. At breakfast, she asks, Papa, are we Aryan? You nod. She beams. You don't sleep that night. You walk her to school the next morning. It's safer that way. Outside the building, a massive portrait of Hitler hangs beside the German flag. The children enter in lines, singing. They raise their arms in unison. Not one child hesitates. The teacher greets them with Heil Hitler. She's 24, blonde, stern. You met her once. She corrected your grammar mid-conversation. Inside the classroom, there are no questions anymore. Only answers. Answers that never change. You catch your daughter whispering to her doll later that week. She's teaching it the anthem. She scolds it for forgetting the second verse. You smile faintly, but deep down something wilts. Your son is only 5, but he already recognizes the Führer's face better than his grandparents. He draws tanks, bombers, flags. You ask him to draw a tree. He says, "Can I put a soldier next to it?" Historians often note that the regime's grip on children was frighteningly effective. That's what terrifies you the most, because children believe things completely. They don't question until it's too late. One night, your daughter has a fever and mutters a speech in her sleep. Something about blood and soil, about being ready to die for Germany. You stroke her hair, whisper that she's safe. But even then, you're not sure what that means anymore. At school meetings, parents are told to support the homeland curriculum. You are expected to correct any confusion at home. It's not even subtext anymore. It's just text, a fringe detail. Some schools replace traditional lullabies with militarized ones. Imagine tucking your child into bed with lyrics about marching to death for the Reich. That happened. You've heard it. Your daughter brings home a drawing next. It's her class, standing in front of a soldier. Everyone's smiling. The sky is red and black. Party colors. You put it on the fridge. You don't dare throw it away. You don't dare not hang it up. You try one evening to talk to her about poetry. Just something simple. Goethe. She shrugs. Says that stuff is soft. Her teacher said real Germans don't waste time with rhymes. They act. They conquer. You wonder if you've already lost her. One night you hear her humming in bed. A lullaby? No. It's the Horst Wessel Lied again. That song follows you like a shadow. It's embedded in everything now. School assemblies, public events, parades. The first 2 lines could wake you from a coma. She stops mid-verse and asks, "Papa, were you a soldier?" You say no. She frowns. Why not? You tell her you worked in a factory. She thinks, maybe I'll be a soldier. You say nothing. Because if you say the wrong thing, even gently, she might repeat it at school. And you can't afford that. You can't afford her loyalty. That's the part that haunts you the most. You're walking through your neighborhood when the sounds reach you first. Boots pounding pavement, voices rising in unison, a parade again. You step aside as the column passes, row after row of brown-shirted men in perfect synchrony. The drums hammer your chest. Flags ripple with violent confidence. A brass band belts the Horst Wessel Lied. You know the tune by heart, whether you like it or not. This is the local SA unit, the Sturmabteilung, also called the Stormtroopers. Not soldiers exactly, but they carry themselves like they are, like they own the streets. You nod to them as they march past, because not nodding might be interpreted the wrong way. And in 1930s Nazi Germany, Every facial twitch is a political act. They call it Gleichschaltung, the coordination of everything. Civil life, culture, sport, media, nothing escapes it. Your bowling club now opens every match with a pledge to the Führer. Your choir rehearsals start with a salute. Even your local bakery displays little cardboard signs. Only German goods sold here. No one asked for this. But here it is. One of your neighbors, Herr Weber, used to run a bookshop. Quiet man, fond of Dickens and Dostoevsky. One day you walk by, and the shop's been renamed Das Deutsche Buchhaus. All foreign literature gone. New posters in the window, bold fonts, aggressive slogans. Reading makes the German spirit strong. You go in, try to find the old poetry section. It's gone, replaced by a children's book about how to spot a Jew. You buy a newspaper, because of course you do. The kiosks stock only Der Stürmer or Völkischer Beobachter now. The headlines scream conspiracy, purity, strength. Even the weather forecast feels angry. Clear skies for the fatherland. You read it because not reading might draw questions, and reading too slowly might draw worse ones. Historians still argue whether daily German life was driven more by fear or enthusiasm. But you, in your modest apartment, brushing dust off your radio, don't have the luxury of debate. You just have to keep up appearances. The radio crackles to life. It's Volksempfänger, the people's receiver, cheap, widely distributed, and designed to pick up only government-approved broadcasts. You get the Führer's speeches, martial music, maybe a folk story here and there. A fringe fact: one early model had no volume knob. Too loud, too bad. You were going to hear the message, like it or not. The voices on the radio talk about renewal, unity, cleansing, and somewhere in between the lines, the unspoken message: conform or disappear. You attend a local meeting, mandatory, of course. The community hall's been redecorated. Red banners, black swastikas, photographs of Aryan families smiling like toothpaste ads. The speaker shouts about loyalty, about the rebirth of Germany. Everyone claps at the right times. You clap too. Your palms sting. Afterward, there's beer and sausages. A man jokes about the old days. Another warns him, careful, people talk. The laughter dies. You wonder when everyday life became theatre. When every gesture, every word started carrying political weight. You used to complain about taxes, roadwork, weather. Now, you nod at slogans like they're gospel and hope no one notices hesitation in your voice. You pass your barber's shop, the same chair, same tools, but now there's a portrait of Hitler near the mirror. A sign reads, "We serve only loyal citizens." You don't ask what that means. You just get your trim and pay. You tip extra. You spot children playing outside. They're not tossing balls or chasing dogs. They're marching. One kid plays guard. The rest pretend to be prisoners. You pause. Smile weakly. A mother watches nearby, arms folded with approval. They'll make fine soldiers, she says. You nod. You don't say what you're thinking. Sometimes you meet with friends in private. Very private. A trusted few, behind drawn curtains, whispering about how strange everything feels. You sip weak coffee, voices low. No one says resistance. No one says wrong. You just murmur things like, it wasn't always like this, or do you remember when we could read what we liked? A car idles outside. Everyone falls silent. It drives away. No one finishes their drinks. You get letters from a cousin in Munich. He used to be louder, more opinionated. Now his handwriting looks smaller. His stories are cautious. He signs off with Heil Hitler. You know he doesn't mean it, but he writes it anyway. You go to the cinema one night. The film starts with newsreel clips. Factories roaring, youth groups saluting, Hitler visiting the countryside. The crowd claps. Then a comedy plays. It's stale and safe and scrubbed of anything controversial. You laugh anyway. It's easier that way. The city feels cleaner now, more organized. There are fewer beggars, fewer drunks, fewer faces that don't quite belong. Some say that's a good thing. You say nothing, because when people disappear, the air grows heavier, but the noise dies down. And in that silence, people pretend everything's better. Historians often wonder how ordinary Germans lived like this, how they accepted or ignored the encroaching rot. But you already know, slowly, like a tide rising 1 inch at a time. By the time it touches your ankles, you're already soaked. You still go to church, though it feels different now. The sermons edge closer to nationalism. The crucifix now shares wall space with a framed quote from the Führer. You pray, but mostly out of habit. The real religion is fear now. On Sundays, you used to take walks. Now, you check the street before opening your door, just in case. You see a man in uniform everywhere you go. Sometimes it's the same man, sometimes you're not sure. Your daughter plays in the courtyard. She salutes you goodnight. You salute back. You hate yourself for it. The school bell clangs like a warning siren. You're not even a student, but the sound gets under your skin. Your youngest daughter hurries off down the block, clutching her lunch pail and workbook, her blonde braids bouncing. She's only 10, and already her lessons are wrapped in ideology like sausages in dough. Inside the classroom, the blackboard reads Ein Volk, ein Reich, ein Führer. One people, one empire, one leader. Every day begins with a salute. Every subject somehow loops back to race, loyalty, or nationhood. Math problems involve calculating tank production. Geography lessons focus on reclaiming lost German lands. Even biology is weaponized. Charts comparing skull shapes, diagrams claiming to prove Aryan superiority. You remember when she came home and asked you why her friend Ilse stopped coming to school. You paused too long before answering, and she tilted her head and said, "The teacher says Jews go to different schools now. It's better that way." You just nodded and said, "Yes, I suppose." Historians still argue whether these youth programs genuinely inspired loyalty or just programmed it. But when you see your daughter color in swastikas during art class and hum martial songs in the bathtub, you feel the answer in your chest and it tightens. Meanwhile, your teenage son, Eric, is in the Hitler Youth. Of course he is. By 1939, it's practically compulsory. The uniform came in a cardboard box, crisp and folded with the odd chemical smell of something mass-produced. He loves it. He hikes through the woods, learns to build fires, tie knots, march in formation. The camaraderie fills something in him. Something his father, the one who disappeared in 1934, used to provide. Eric comes home glowing. Talks about defending the fatherland, about honor, about destiny. You listen, smile weakly, and wonder when exactly he stopped asking your opinion about things. Sometimes he corrects you. Don't say that about the party. You're not supposed to read that. Once, he even took a book from your shelf, Goethe of all things, and said it didn't feel German enough. You laughed, thinking it was a joke, but he didn't laugh back. There's a report floating around your town that a father somewhere in Saxony made a joke about Hitler at dinner. The next day, his son reported him. He vanished. People whisper about it in line at the grocer like a campfire ghost story. But no one says it too loud. And everyone makes sure to laugh just the right amount when jokes are told. Not too hard, not too soft. Eric's group once held a mock trial. They picked a classmate to pretend to be a traitor and staged the whole thing. Accusations, confessions, punishment. You asked Eric what it was for. He said, to understand justice. You wanted to say something clever and sharp, but you just said, oh, and drank your tea. You remember a time when teenagers rebelled by sneaking into jazz clubs, not by polishing their jackboots. A quirky little fact floats through your memory. Some German teens formed underground groups that resisted the regime in secret, like the Edelweiss Pirates or Swing Youth. They wore long hair, listened to band music, sometimes even painted anti-Nazi slogans. You heard of one boy who played American records behind blackout curtains. They caught him. He was 16, but that's not your Eric. He believes. He believes hard. He talks about the Führer like some kids talk about superheroes. When he prays, it's to both God and Germany, and you're not entirely sure which one he pictures first. And yet, when you pass his bedroom at night, sometimes you hear quiet crying. He doesn't know you hear. You never mention it. You just leave an extra blanket folded at the door. Your daughter brings home a graded assignment, a family tree. All students had to submit one. Yours, fortunately, checks out. German blood, 4 generations back, her teacher wrote in red ink. You don't even want to think about what would have happened if it hadn't. Historians debate how deeply ordinary Germans bought into the racial ideology versus how much they just went along with it to protect their kids. But when your child's academic success hinges on proving you're not tainted, you don't have time for philosophy. Some children in town vanish. It's not broadcast, no headlines, but you notice it. One week they're in the schoolyard, the next, gone. Later, you hear whispers about disabilities, asylums, relocation. Your neighbor's son had a limp. He doesn't anymore. Your neighbor never speaks of him. One day at the store, your daughter points to an old man with a curved spine and asks, "Why is he allowed outside?" You freeze. The cashier laughs. You don't. You receive a notice that Eric has been selected for a leadership program. It means more training, more ideology, possibly even promotion to a junior officer one day. He's ecstatic. You are not. You try to talk to him about music girls, the stars, anything that isn't politics. He listens politely, then says something like, "We must be strong first, Father. There'll be time for that after the war." He's 16. You consider hiding certain books, locking the drawer with old family letters, removing that one photo of your grandmother that might suggest, well, who knows what it might suggest. It's hard to parent when the state sits at your dinner table every night, smiling with clean teeth and a loaded briefcase. Your authority feels borrowed now, conditional. Like if you misstep, even your own children might return you to the customer service counter. Still, you tuck them in. You kiss their foreheads. You say things like, "Be brave and stay safe," even when what you really mean is, "Please don't believe all of it." Because in Nazi Germany, parenting doesn't end at bedtime. You wake to the rhythmic hum of planes overhead. Not a lot. Just enough to remind you that the sky belongs to someone else now. The blackout curtains are still drawn, heavy and stiff, blocking out everything but the memory of daylight. You lie there for a moment and listen. It's not an air raid, just patrols. You hope. When you finally step outside, the city looks like it's holding its breath. The war is underway, and everything you once thought was stable now floats in a strange suspension. People walk faster, speak quieter, and look over their shoulders more often. You start to do the same. There's a ration card in your coat pocket. You always check that it's still there, even though you're not sure what you'd do if it weren't. Every item now involves a careful calculation. Bread, butter, soap, coffee. Forget about it. You drink roasted barley and pretend it's close. The shopkeeper raises an eyebrow when you linger too long by the sugar. You move on. You line up for potatoes and cigarettes. Though you don't smoke, you're trading them. Barter is the unofficial second economy now. And a pack of cigarettes can get you everything from aspirin to silence. Historians still debate how effective the Nazi war economy really was. On paper, it looked efficient. Factories humming, production rising. But you know better. You see the corners cut, the quality slipping, the whispers about forced labor. A neighbor who works at the munitions plant tells you that the bolts keep snapping. Doesn't matter, he shrugs. They just make more. Every household contributes. You've donated pots, pans, even your old bicycle, melted down for scrap. Children collect acorns for some obscure chemical process no one quite understands. Housewives roll bandages at the community center. Every window displays swastikas and slogans because the absence of one is noticed more than the presence. Once you forgot to put yours up for the Führer's birthday. Just once. A man from the block warden's office came by to check on your health. You smiled, apologized, put the flag up before dusk. You've never forgotten again. The quirky bit, you hear someone managed to forge a ration book using nothing but potato starch and shoe polish. It's a tiny, silly act of rebellion, but it gives you hope. Not that you'd ever try it. Of course not. At work, everything is slower. Your boss has disappeared. No one talks about it. The new manager is younger, sharper, and much more interested in your political opinions than your work output. You learn to nod a lot, avoid certain jokes, and keep your mouth shut around newcomers. Sometimes he asks for updates that have nothing to do with your job. Who comes in late? Anyone seem disloyal? You know exactly what he's doing, and you give vague answers. Everyone works hard. Nothing strange to report. You want to scream, but you don't. You file the reports, staple the papers, and wait for lunch. There's a public board downtown where they post war updates. You glance at it like it's a weather forecast. Victory in France, progress in the east, enemies on all sides. The posters are bright, bold, theatrical. But your cousin writes from Hamburg and says morale is collapsing there. Bombs have turned his street to ash. He signs the letter with God save us all, then crosses it out. Mail is censored now. Every envelope sliced open and resealed. You write cautiously, filling your letters with nothing but news about the weather, the children, the garden. Your cousin writes back about the same. You both understand what you really mean. Historians argue whether the German population knew the full extent of what the regime was doing. You think about that often. You know what they say is happening out east. The ghettos, the relocations, the labor camps. But the details, the numbers, the reality, they come in fragments. You hear one version from the party, another from a frightened uncle, and a third from a Polish farmhand who lasted 2 weeks and never smiled once. Still, life has rhythms. You make soup, you sweep the sidewalk, you fix the radio when it crackles, you hum lullabies to your daughter and pretend they're not drowned out by the sound of distant artillery. One day, you find a leaflet on the ground, dropped by an Allied plane. It shows a cartoon Hitler with devil horns and bold English text. You hide it in your coat before anyone sees. At home, you read it twice, then burn it in the stove. But you feel strangely lighter afterward, like the outside world still exists. Another day, you hear music, real music, a jazz record, low and muffled, coming from an open window. You freeze. You shouldn't linger. You definitely shouldn't smile. But you do. You pass a line of women standing outside a bakery. No one knows if there's bread. They just hope. You join them. Because what else can you do? Inside the shop, the baker hands you a half loaf, smaller than your palm, and says nothing. You say nothing back. That's the transaction now. Silence and starch. The evenings are the worst. The lights stay dim, the windows covered. You sit in the half dark, listening to static, waiting. waiting for news, for sleep, for the end of something you can't even name. The sirens go off again, and this time they mean it. You grab your coat, your papers, the emergency tin of biscuits. You usher the kids into the basement. Your daughter clutches her stuffed rabbit. Eric doesn't come. He's at training. Your stomach coils at the thought. The walls shake once, twice, and dust falls from the ceiling. Your daughter whimpers. You hum a marching tune, slowly, like a lullaby. The irony is not lost on you. After the noise fades, you emerge. The sky is black, but nothing's burning nearby. Not tonight. You consider that a victory. The neighbor's window is shattered. He's sweeping up glass in his socks. You offer him tape. He nods. No one speaks. Back inside, you put the kettle on even though there's no tea. It's just hot water, but it feels civilized. Your daughter falls asleep on your shoulder, and for a moment, just a moment, you let yourself believe that maybe, just maybe, it will all still end before your children grow up to forget what the world looked like before the war. The days blur now, threaded together by sirens, scarcity, and routine. You keep going, because what else is there? Even your dreams have adjusted. They no longer feature peace, or escape, or freedom. Just cues, always cues. You wake, brush your teeth with baking soda, and pack your lunch. A piece of stale bread and a sliver of turnip. If you're lucky, a neighbor will sneak you an egg. Not as a gift. Nothing is free now, but as a gesture. Part of the unspoken barter economy that pulses beneath everything. One act of quiet kindness at a time. The neighborhood children wear brown uniforms now. You see them marching, singing those eerie, cheerful songs, half nursery rhyme, half battle cry. Your daughter joins in one day, mouthing lyrics she doesn't understand. You smile and gently change the subject. Do you want to draw something instead? But she keeps singing. And you wonder, not for the first time, if she's already slipping away from you into someone else's version of childhood. School is different. Her lessons focus less on reading and more on loyalty. The teacher asks strange questions. What do you love most about the Führer? What would you do if someone insulted Germany? You wince at her answers, not because they're wrong, but because they sound so confident, so rehearsed. Historians still debate how deep the indoctrination really went, how many believed and how many pretended. For children, it's impossible to tell. They're malleable, impressionable, like warm wax. The state molds them eagerly, quickly, and completely. You see it in the drawings that come home. Eagles, tanks, flags, all in perfect, chilling symmetry. Then there's the Hitler Youth. Your son, Eric, joined last year. At first he was just excited about the camping trips and uniforms. You didn't protest. No one does. Refusing would raise suspicion, maybe worse. So you signed the form, kissed his forehead, and told yourself it was harmless. Now he barely speaks to you. He reports things, tiny things. A neighbor's odd comment, A missing photo of the Führer in someone's hallway. He talks about duty, honor, strength. You used to talk about comic books and bicycles. That feels like someone else's life. One evening he asks you flatly, "Do you think Germany will lose the war?" You freeze. What's the right answer? You deflect. Why do you ask? But he's already written something in his notebook. The family dinner table feels colder now. You eat together, but the warmth has gone. Every word is measured, every silence suspicious. Even laughter feels rehearsed, like lines from a poorly written play. And yet, on Sundays, the city still tries to pretend. Families stroll in the park. Couples sit on benches. You even hear a street musician once playing a quiet accordion tune. It lasts 5 minutes before 2 officers walk by and the man disappears. The fringe detail you cling to this week. Someone's been planting paper flowers around the city. Tiny, delicate blooms made from ration wrappers, left in cracks between bricks. No one talks about them, but you see one tucked into the corner of a street sign. A daisy. It almost makes you cry. You pass the church on your way to market. Its doors are open, but the sermons are different now. The pastor is younger, louder, and more political. Gone are the quiet hymns of mercy. Instead, it's obedience, duty, and sacrifice. You nod along because someone's always watching. Still, in the back pew, the old priest still lights candles each morning, quietly, without fanfare. He prays with his eyes closed. You sit near him once and ask, "Do you still believe?" He smiles faintly and says, "I believe we'll need forgiveness when this is over." The radio remains your main tether to the outside world. Each night, you listen for updates. The broadcasts are full of confidence. Victories on the Eastern Front, Allied setbacks, speeches filled with metaphors about wolves and steel. But you're not stupid. You hear the tremble behind the bluster. You know desperation when you hear it. Some brave soul in your building listens to the BBC. Illegally, of course. You hear the signal bleed through the walls, distorted but unmistakable. You hold your breath when it happens. Just hearing a British accent feels like treason. And yet, it's like a breeze from an open window, brief, dangerous, and refreshing. You walk past the train station more often now. Trains come and go without names, without schedules, without passengers you ever see again. One day, you glimpse a carriage filled with blank faces, children maybe, or prisoners. No one says anything. The guards look bored. Historians still argue whether the average German knew what was happening to the Jews. The full horror, the camps, the extermination. You only know fragments. That one family on your street disappeared overnight. That someone whispered about cattle cars. That a friend of a friend smuggled out a letter, half-burned, soaked in fear. But when you ask questions, the answers are always the same. Don't, or worse, be careful. You go to work. You go home. You avoid eye contact with the officials. You avoid speaking too freely. You avoid hoping too loudly. Life becomes a careful negotiation between survival and silence. And yet, in the midst of all this greyness, there's a birthday. Your daughter turns 7. You manage to scrounge together enough sugar for a tiny cake. Just flour, water, jam from last year's cherries. You wrap her present in old newspaper, one of your scarves, dyed pink with beetroot. She squeals with delight. For a moment, everything feels normal. You cry into the dishwater that night, at bedtime. She asks if the war will end soon. You say yes. Of course, yes. And then you lie awake wondering if she'll believe you the next time you say it. The morning brings snow. It's early, unexpected. Your boots are full of holes, but the snow covers the bomb craters, the broken glass, the bloodstains. For a moment, the world looks clean again. You step outside and breathe in the cold. And just before the wind picks up, you hear laughter. From a balcony, 2 children throwing snowballs. One hits a passing officer square in the back. He pauses, turns, and laughs. It's so absurd you nearly choke. Then the wind howls and you wrap your coat tighter. Just another day in Nazi Germany, and still you endure. Morning fog clings to the rooftops like a blanket that refuses to lift, as if even the weather's trying to dull the edges of another grey day. You've gotten good at deciphering silence, knowing when a neighbour is too quiet, or when a glance lasts half a second too long. Paranoia isn't a disorder anymore. It's a form of hygiene. You press through the market crowd. Cabbages, rutabagas, and endless stacks of ersatz everything. Coffee that tastes like burnt acorns. Bread that crumbles like chalk. You hand over your ration card and smile like you're grateful. You aren't. But the woman behind the stall is just as tired as you, and that's enough. At home, the walls feel closer than usual. Your building used to house 3 families per floor. Now it's 7. 2 families moved in last week, evacuees from a city hit by British bombs. They brought nothing but a child's mattress, a pan, and a haunting silence. You offer them soup. They offer you a cigarette. It's not tobacco, but no one complains. The city's rhythms have changed. Everything now follows 2 tempos. The slow grind of daily life and the sharp staccato shock of sirens. Air raids don't scare you anymore. Not exactly. But they've redefined what counts as normal. The drills, the blackout curtains, the sprints to basements and shelters. This is just Tuesday now. When the sirens sound, you know what to grab. Your coat, your papers, the bag with crackers and iodine tablets. Your daughter holds your hand too tightly. Your son stands stiff, like a soldier already. You all breathe shallowly, as if you're trying not to wake the bombs. Historians still argue whether Allied bombings were strategic brilliance or blind brutality. You only know the aftermath. Fires that suck the air from entire rooms. Buildings folded like playing cards. Streets filled with dust that smells like metal. And something worse. You don't ask what. You don't want to know. During one raid, the building next to yours vanishes. 1 second it's there, with its crooked shutters and dusty flower boxes. The next, it's just noise, rubble, and a rising wall of smoke. You don't even scream. You just count your fingers, your children's heads, and thank a God you haven't prayed to in years. Later, you help dig. You know the names of the people under there, but you say nothing. You just pass bricks. Your hands bleed. No one offers a bandage. That night, the sirens don't come. You dream of wind and water, something clean. The fire brigade still operates, though barely. Their hoses are more hope than pressure, and half their team is teenage boys. But they arrive. They always do. Covered in soot, coughing, shouting half commands. You admire them the way you used to admire athletes. Somehow, through all of it, the bureaucracy still functions. You receive a notice. Your home will be inspected for wartime readiness. You clean like it's a royal visit. The inspector arrives with a clipboard and dead eyes. He checks your blackout curtains, asks about your shelter supplies, then stares at a family photo for a few beats too long. You resist the urge to move it. The inspector leaves without comment. You exhale like you've been underwater. There's one tiny joy, the stray cat that's taken up residence in the stairwell. No one claims it, but everyone feeds it. A sliver of sausage here, a drop of milk there. The children call her Lotte. She sleeps curled on a coat someone left by the boiler. You don't trust most people anymore. But somehow, everyone trusts Lotte. In the evenings, if the sky is quiet, you play cards. Sometimes you even let yourself laugh. Your neighbor tells a joke about Goebbels and a dentist. It's barely funny, dangerously risky, and you snort anyway. Then you spend 5 minutes in panic, hoping no one heard. This is how you live now, between fear and fragments of joy. You hear rumors from the front, whispers that the Russians are pushing west, that the Americans have landed, that Hitler hasn't been seen in weeks. But then the newsreels show him again, waving stiffly, surrounded by flags and marching boots. You can't tell if it's live or recycled. There's a fringe story going around. Someone swears that a man in your city built a working radio out of scrap wire and a biscuit tin, just to listen to Allied broadcasts. You hope it's true. Not because of the radio, but because it means someone still has that kind of hope, that kind of brain. One morning, a new poster appears across from your tram stop. It's not the usual proud, square-jawed soldier or the smiling housewife with perfect posture. This one's dark, a silhouette. The words read, "They are watching." No explanation, no name, just that. You stare at it too long. A passerby clears their throat. You move on. Historians still argue whether the average German felt complicit, whether silence equals guilt. You aren't sure. You're too busy surviving. But you've stopped calling yourself innocent. You watch your son try to shave with a spoon and a shard of mirror. He says it's for drill. You remember when he used to cry when his knees got scraped. Now he practices marching in the hallway. He doesn't flinch at loud noises anymore. that scares you more than the bombs. In the closet, behind the coats, you keep your box of before, a cinema stub, a pressed flower, a postcard from the Black Forest. You open it once a week, just to remember that those things existed, that they weren't just stories. Sometimes you whisper foreign words under your breath. French, English, Russian, words you once studied in school before languages became suspect. They taste strange now, forbidden, like chocolate. Like a distant cousin writes you from the countryside. Their village is quiet, the cows still give milk, and the stars are brighter out there. You imagine it while eating watery soup by candlelight. You don't even like cows, but now they sound like a miracle. The moon rises blood orange tonight. Your daughter says it looks like an eye. You don't correct her. She's not wrong. Before bed, you tuck her in with the same lullaby your mother sang to you. It's not German. It has no politics. Just a melody that drifts and folds around her small breath. She clings to your hand for a moment, then lets go, and you sit there in the dark, listening to the quiet, and you wonder, if the world ends tomorrow, will anyone know you tried to stay kind? The train doesn't whistle anymore. You stand on the platform with a paper bag of stale bread and a travel permit that smells like damp ink. The air tastes of coal and boiled cabbage. Nothing festive, nothing hopeful. The destination is vague, the schedule hazier. You've been relocated, a word that used to mean vacation, but now means surrender. Inside the compartment, there's barely space to breathe. You're pressed between an old man who hasn't blinked since Leipzig and a woman cradling a bundle that might be a baby or just all her possessions. No one asks. Asking invites stories, and stories lead to consequences. The train groans forward. It moves like it's apologizing. Through the dirty windows, fields pass by, blank, indifferent, interrupted only by occasional rows of trees, like mute sentinels. You used to love these forests. Now you wonder what they've seen or buried. A uniformed guard checks papers with the grace of a tired butcher. He flips yours twice, furrows his brow at your last name, and moves on without a word. Your breath stays held another 30 seconds, just in case he changes his mind. You're sent to a village that looks like it came out of a postcard before someone burned the edges. White-walled houses, low stone fences, and suspiciously tidy flower beds. It should be charming. Instead, it feels like a place trying too hard to seem normal. You're lodged with a widow who speaks in whispers and walks like her bones remember a better war. There's work, of course. Endless, punishing work. You're assigned to a munitions factory, not making bombs exactly, but making the pieces that make the bombs work. Screws, casings, fuses. The machinery hums like a threat, constant and deafening. You try to focus, try not to think about what your hands are helping assemble. Historians still argue whether average workers knew what their factories produced, whether ignorance was real or just convenient. You know now that it's not about knowledge, it's about survival. You learn not to ask. The fewer details you absorb, the more sleep you get. There's something uniquely terrible about the rhythm of forced labor. It's not just the hours or the cold or the noise. It's the way every part of your body screams no, and still you keep going. Because someone's watching. Because you need the bread. Because your children are somewhere else, waiting for word that might never come. And yet, people adapt. It's absurd. How humans adjust. You find a rhythm. You know how to angle your wrist so the machine doesn't sting. You know which foreman is more lenient. You know that if you give your lunch bread to old Frau Wimmer, she'll fix your torn sleeve in the evening without asking. At night, you gather with the others in the kitchen. The stove gives off barely enough warmth to fight the chill. But it's something. Someone hums a folk tune. Someone else mends socks with thread pulled from curtains. You almost laugh when one woman repurposes a swastika armband as a pot holder. Almost. The children here are different. Hollow-eyed and twitchy, they mimic adults with eerie precision. One boy recites propaganda slogans like a bedtime story. A girl plays interrogation with her doll. You wonder if they'll ever know what childhood really was. Or if they'll just carry the shadow of this war into whatever comes next. There's a rumor that someone nearby hides a shortwave radio. No one dares confirm it, but you notice how sometimes the conversations shift. People suddenly mention names they shouldn't know. A British victory here. A Soviet push there. You say nothing. You listen. Food is tighter now. Ersatz meat becomes a luxury, replaced with lard smeared on crusts. Coffee is a lie. Sugar is a myth. You lose weight without noticing until your reflection looks like a memory. And still, the factory calls, the machines clatter, and the days bleed into each other like dirty watercolors. One afternoon, the air raid sirens blare, but this time, the bombs fall closer. The sky tears open, and you dive into a ditch with 3 strangers. One is sobbing, one is praying, one is whistling an old dance tune like this is some surreal variety show. You close your eyes and picture the ocean. You've never seen it, but you pretend it's calm. When the dust settles, the factory's gone, reduced to metal bones and scorched earth. They'll send you somewhere else, of course. There's always more war to build. But for a day, you sit in the debris and let the silence speak. The widow you lodge with finally tells you about her husband. He died in Poland. She doesn't say how. You don't ask. But you see the way her hands shake when she buttons your collar. The way she avoids your eyes when the radio speaks Polish names. Her grief is a quiet ghost that lives in the corners of her house. A local school is converted into a hospital for wounded soldiers. You volunteer to help, partly for the food, partly for the distraction. You bandage wounds you don't understand, serve soup you can't taste, listen to groans you can't forget. Some men scream in their sleep, some whisper confessions you pretend not to hear. There's one soldier missing a leg and half a face. He tells you very calmly that he saw angels during the shelling. You believe him, or at least you want to. Because if angels are real, maybe hell is optional. You get letters sometimes, blurred, censored, words blacked out like guilty secrets. You hold on to them like prayer beads. Your daughter says she's learning to knit. Your son drew a picture of the cat. You tape it to the wall above your cot. It's crooked and smudged and the best thing you've seen in months. Your sleep is shallow and brittle. Every creak becomes a knock. Every gust of wind sounds like marching boots. But you keep going. Because you must. Because even ashes still carry the shape of what they used to be. And when the snow starts falling, soft and silent, you step outside in the dark and let it land on your face. For a moment, it feels like the world is washing itself clean. You find yourself being herded into a transport bus with bright red interiors and perfectly pressed seats, the kind that screams state pride. Today is your state-sponsored vacation day, not the sort you dreamed of as a child, with distant sandy beaches and adventure. This is a forced getaway, complete with synchronized chants and swastika-laden umbrellas. The bus hums along smooth roads, lined with banners praising the glorious fatherland, as you try to convince yourself that even this mandated holiday might offer a slice of respite from the relentless grind. The journey feels surreal. Outside, the countryside rolls by like a well-ordered film set. Fields trimmed and hedged to perfection. Trees planted in rows. A rhythm both hypnotic and oppressive. You notice groups of families, their faces set in polite smiles as they wave at each passing landmark. Their voices merge into one clear, almost musical refrain, the sound of a nation marching to one tune. You're here too, part of it all, whether you want to be or not. At the destination, a resort conveniently named Sonnenreich Haven, the protocol is as strict as it is peculiar. The moment you step off the bus, uniformed ushers greet you with crisp hiles and guide you to temporary lodgings that have all the necessary comforts. Clean towels, regulated meals, and even state-of-the-art, if you can call it that, sunblock. Yes, sunblock. An unlikely necessity under a regime that preaches hard labor and rigid order. Yet they provide it with a flourish, accompanied by a reminder to protect your pure skin. You apply the lotion with slow, methodical strokes, as if each movement might be observed by unseen eyes. It's absurdly gentle for a world otherwise hardened by fear. The resort is as much a propaganda showcase as it is a retreat. The grounds feature manicured gardens where wildflowers have been replaced by sculptures of idealized figures in athletic poses. Every detail has been curated to impress upon you that the regime cares even about leisure. You see groups of citizens engaging in organized sports, running in formation, diving into a clear pool with perfect synchrony, and even doing exercises that mimic the precise steps of military drills. It's all very high-spirited and regimented, a chorus of bodies moving in flawless harmony. At midday, the guests are gathered in a sun-dappled courtyard for a cultural infusion session. Here, a charismatic speaker addresses the crowd, his tone buoyant, his words rehearsed. He tells tales of historic German triumphs, casting the vacation as a time when you can recharge your spirit for the glory of tomorrow's war efforts. His voice is filled with patriotic fervor, while behind him, synchronized music plays, trumpets and drums blending into an oddly joyful anthem. You try not to feel the irony. Here you are, forced to enjoy leisure, under the ever-watchful gaze of a state that has no real interest in your personal happiness, but insists that you parade it anyway. Laughter rings out at a short break when someone cracks a joke about the absurdity of having to earn vacation points through participation in compulsory fun, an exercise that, while outwardly forced, carries a mischievous undertone. You chuckle despite yourself, wondering if such laughter might be seen as a subtle act of subversion. Still, you swallow the joke, knowing that every sound is monitored. The guests later whisper about whether one could trade vacation points on the black market, if only as a ticket to a more genuine escape. The conversation is fleeting, quickly replaced by the next scheduled event, a quirky detail that makes you pause. The resort offers Reich-approved sunscreen that comes in an oddly nostalgic tin, reminiscent of wartime rations. Its label boasts the latest in racial hygiene and purity protection. The irony isn't lost on you. This lotion, meant to safeguard the skin of the ideal Aryan citizen, is as much a symbol of the regime's absurd control over even the minutest parts of your daily existence. You dab a bit onto your arms and smile ruefully. It's a forced souvenir from a vacation that isn't really a vacation at all. After the cultural hour, you join a guided excursion, a tour of a nearby natural park that has been sanitized and transformed into a state-approved showcase of German natural beauty. The guide, dressed in an immaculate uniform adorned with stars and medals, leads the group along a path where every detail has been planned. He points out a crystal-clear lake, its surface undisturbed by human worry, and claims that its purity is a reflection of the ideal German spirit. You note that while the water might be clear, your thoughts are muddied by memories of bombed-out neighborhoods and broken lives. Still, for these few hours, you let the scenic beauty wash over you, even if it is wrapped in banners of propaganda. Along the trail, you sense a persistent underlying current of enforced camaraderie. Strangers become companions for the walk, swapping guarded smiles and minimal words about family back home. One elderly man, with deep lines of worry etched on his face, leans closer to share a murmured comment about how, before the war, vacations meant freedom, a concept now as distant as a myth. His voice is soft, fraught with the bitterness of the past, and you nod, understanding that even in this orchestrated fun, memories seep in unbidden. As the tour continues, the guide points out an area where the state has arranged for recreational activities. There's a field set up with equipment for beach volleyball, only it's more like a military exercise in coordination. Participants must play in strict formation, every move choreographed to the melody of a loudspeaker broadcasting party slogans. You watch a group as they spike a makeshift ball, each jump and landing synchronized like clockwork. A teenager next to you whispers, "It's almost like we're drilling for battle." You smile at the remark. Inside, you're grappling with the surreal fact that even a casual game is infused with the absurdity of perpetual war preparations. Lunch is served in a dining hall filled with long tables, where every guest is assigned a seat based on their contribution score. The meals are bland, of course, pre-packaged and nutritionally optimized for efficiency rather than enjoyment. You eat slowly, the taste of the food blending with the overpowering scent of disinfectant and state-approved cologne. Historians still argue whether such measures during the wartime created a new, sanitized form of nationalism, one that filtered out the messy realities of life in favor of a cleaner, orchestrated veneer. For you, the meal is both sustenance and a reminder. Even nourishment is political here. As afternoon turns to evening, the resort hosts a series of evening entertainment events. There's a modest talent show where local citizens perform approved folk songs and dances. The performances are skillful but somber, a collective expression of duty rather than joy. One act features a couple performing a delicate tap dance routine, their shoes clicking perfectly in time with a forced melody. You're struck by how, in the midst of rigorous control, a spark of humanity still manages to shine through. After the show, you wander through the resort's lights, twinkling like artificial stars against the night. You pause in a quiet corridor and note a small plaque commemorating the Friends of the Reich. A strange mix of volunteerism and iconography that hints at a backdoor network of gentle resistance. The plaque, barely noticed by most, bears a name you recall from your youth. A forgotten artist whose work was once celebrated before being silenced by the regime. It's a reminder that even in enforced leisure, history murmurs its truths. When the day finally winds down, you return to your modest room. Outside, the synchronized chants have softened to a lull, the voices receding into the night like an echo of distant drums. You peel off the sunscreen with sticky fingers and reflect on the day. This vacation, mandated and stripped of spontaneity, is nonetheless a pause from the oppressive routine, an opportunity to glimpse the layers beneath the painted surface of state control. It leaves you both weary and wistful, having tasted freedom in small, orchestrated moments. As you lie in bed, the events of the day settle over you. The memory of the clean air in the natural park, the soft murmur of genuine conversation, and even the ironic humor of a sunscreen tin become a quiet comfort. You know tomorrow the routine will resume. The same watchful eyes, the same controlled smiles. Yet for a few hours today, you manage to find a semblance of respite in the midst of a manicured, all too perfect vacation. It's a fragile interlude, a whisper of possibility in a symphony of command. And as you close your eyes, the sound of distant synchronized chants mixes with the soft hum of your thoughts, reminding you that even in mandated moments of leisure, the heart seeks its own kind of freedom. You let that thought cradle you through the night, a small, defiant comfort amid the orchestrated order of this peculiar world. The next morning, the sky above your city feels unusually quiet. Too quiet, in fact. There's no birdsong, no laughter spilling from open windows, and none of the usual market buzz. Instead, a hush blankets everything, as if the world is holding its breath. You wake with a sense of unease that hardens when your neighbor, an old man with a voice like gravel, leans out his window and murmurs a single word: raid. You'd hoped today would pass without incident, but the wail of sirens cuts through your thoughts like a blade. It starts low and climbs into a mechanical scream that makes your bones tighten. You've been trained to respond to that sound. Everyone has. You grab your emergency pack, sling on your coat, and head for the cellar, feet echoing in the stairwell. Around you, others do the same, like clockwork dolls wound too tight. There's no chaos, only this strange rehearsed silence. The air in the cellar is damp and heavy with fear. You're shoulder to shoulder with neighbors you barely know beyond polite nods. There's the couple from 2 floors up, clutching their toddler, who keeps whispering about thunder. A teenage boy fidgets, bouncing a rubber ball in his hand over and over again. Someone hisses for him to stop. The atmosphere tightens further. You sit with your back to the wall, breathing through your mouth to avoid the thick scent of mildew and fear. And then you hear it. The first distant boom. It doesn't sound like anything from the movies. It's lower, more guttural. Not like thunder, not like a car crash. Something worse. A deep, bone-vibrating thud that shakes the dust from the ceiling. You clutch your knees and try to time your breaths with the rhythm of the explosions. The walls tremble again, and you swear the lights flicker, though it might just be your eyes playing tricks. The state calls these moments defensive disruptions, as if rebranding aerial bombardment with bureaucratic poetry could make it less terrifying. You remember the leaflets dropped a few weeks ago, warning that enemies of peace may seek to disturb the tranquility of our cities, as if entire buildings being blown apart is just a rude interruption. Historians still argue whether the civilian population in Nazi Germany fully understood the scale of the destruction their own military had inflicted elsewhere, or whether, by the time Allied bombs began falling regularly, the veil of propaganda was still too thick to pierce. For you, crouched in the dark, theory doesn't matter. What matters is whether the next bomb lands on your block. A quirky detail sticks in your mind. Someone, in a bizarre bid to lift morale, once brought a gramophone into the shelter and played swing records, American ones of all things. There was a moment days ago when that jazzy rhythm filled the basement with something close to life, but the machine disappeared soon after. You suspect someone reported it. Everything fun seems to vanish like that. After an hour, the booms grow softer. The sirens change pitch again, signaling the all clear. You and the others climb back up into the ruined morning like moles blinking in the sunlight. Dust swirls through broken window panes. The air smells of smoke, sharp and acrid. A block away, a building lies crumpled in on itself like a child's paper craft gone wrong. People gather at a distance, whispering, pointing. You pass a makeshift aid station where a nurse with trembling hands tends to an elderly woman cradling her cat. The cat looks utterly unbothered. The woman doesn't stop crying. You offer to help, but there's not much to do, unless you count clearing rubble with your bare hands. Back home, you do a mental tally. Water still runs, stove still works, your belongings mostly intact. You sweep broken glass from the kitchen, trying not to glance at the cracked portrait of the Führer hanging crooked on the wall. You're not even sure how it got there. You didn't put it up. Probably the building superintendent, making sure everyone displayed the required devotion. You straighten it, not out of loyalty, but because crooked things make you anxious now. Later that day, work resumes. Yes, work. The regime expects productivity even under bombardment. You report to your shift at the munitions depot, only to find the outer fence scorched. A corner of the building collapsed. Your supervisor greets everyone with a brittle smile and says, "Business as usual, comrades." It's not a joke. You get to it, assembling shell casings while the air still hums with yesterday's terror. At lunch, there's talk of a nearby school hit during the raid. Rumors say it was an accident. Others claim it was deliberate. Punishment for a resistance leaflet found on the premises. No one knows what's true anymore. Conspiracy weaves its way through even the blandest conversation. That evening, you wander through the eerily quiet streets. Stores are boarded up. A propaganda loudspeaker crackles with static, then coughs out a message about glorious perseverance and unshakable unity. It feels like a ghost is trying to comfort you with a stick. You turn a corner and nearly stumble over a crater the size of a small car. It wasn't there yesterday. A boy stands at its edge, tossing pebbles into the hole like he's playing a game. You watch him for a moment and wonder how a child learns to treat destruction like a sandbox. By the time you reach your apartment, night has descended. You light a candle, electricity's still spotty, and sit near the window, looking out at a skyline now broken in 3 places. There's no moon, just the vague shimmer of stars behind a veil of ash and cloud. You sip thin tea and try not to think about tomorrow's sirens. Still, somewhere deep in your gut, you know that this strange routine, wake, survive, work, repeat, is slowly hardening you. Not in a heroic sense, not like the state wants you to be, more like clay in a furnace, brittle on the outside, cracking beneath the surface. The raid was just another page in this weird, spiraling diary of your life. And like everyone else, you'll turn the page, clean up the mess, and pretend normal is just around the corner. The factory smells like oil and sweat, with a lingering metallic tang that never quite fades from your nostrils. It clings to your clothes, your skin, even your dreams. You return to your post under the flickering industrial lights, where your job is to punch holes into metal sheets for airplane parts you'll never fly in. Precision is everything, even when the air raids keep shaking your hands. You'd never thought of yourself as essential. And yet, here you are, part of the war machine. The Reich calls you a home front hero, though there's no cape involved, only a smock that smells like overcooked cabbage and a lunch tin that's half air. Posters around the wall scream about duty and loyalty, their faces permanently locked in awkward patriotic ecstasy. You try not to look at them. Work starts with the blast of a whistle, and you settle into the rhythm. Step, align, punch, move. It's numbing, but oddly comforting. like muscle memory with no thought required. Your supervisor paces behind you, arms crossed, lips tight. He's not the worst one. There are rumors of another foreman who docked pay from a woman because she sneezed too loudly and disrupted the order. Productivity charts hang by the doors like trophies. Every dip is marked in red. You already know where this is heading. Your shift has fallen just below the average. The charts don't account for bombings, injuries, or hunger. They don't care that half your team sleeps in shelters. Just numbers. Some days, it feels like you're assembling weapons with one hand and being crushed by paperwork with the other. And then there are the forced laborers. They arrive in trucks, their faces blank, limbs stiff, escorted by armed guards. They're mostly from Eastern Europe, though you have overheard the word political whispered more than once. Their uniforms are mismatched and patched. No one tells you their names. They eat separately, work separately, and sleep in on-site barracks behind locked gates. You're told not to talk to them, but their eyes say plenty. Some burn with quiet rage. Others are hollowed out like old tree stumps. Historians still debate whether most Germans working in these industries truly understood the extent of exploitation or simply chose not to look too closely. You know what you see, but whether you know, in the deepest sense of the word, is harder to say. You share a glance with a girl, no older than 17, who struggles with a gear twice her size. You want to help, but a glance from the supervisor freezes you. Your fingers return to the punch machine. Lunch is barely food. Watery beet soup, a crust of bread. You eat with co-workers who speak in half sentences now, as if language itself is rationed. The guy across from you, Klaus, has started collecting matchbox labels. Says it keeps his mind off the noise. He gives you one today, a red one with a leaping deer, and says, "For luck." You pocket it, unsure if it's a joke or a lifeliners. In the afternoon, the propaganda truck rolls by again, blaring about victory and sacrifice. It's a daily intrusion, a loudspeaker sermon on how every bolt you tighten brings Germany one step closer to triumph. You wonder if they play the same recording in every city, or if someone's actually in the back of that truck with a microphone, sipping coffee and yelling about national destiny. An odd moment hits when you catch yourself humming along to the tune piped through the loudspeaker. A rousing martial melody that worms its way into your brain like a parasite with a metronome. You stop immediately, disturbed at how easy it is to fall into sync. By now, your back aches, your feet pulse, and your ears ring from the constant machinery. The final hour of your shift is the longest. You keep glancing at the clock, which seems to mock you with its frozen second hand. And just before the bell finally shrieks, the plant manager bursts in to announce a new productivity contest. The top performing team will get a bonus, a jar of jam and a pair of socks. This actually causes a ripple of excitement. Jam is basically mythological now. You leave the factory under a darkening sky. Your hands raw from metal shavings. On your way home, you pass another factory, this one guarded more heavily. Rumor says they're making V-weapons there, the kind that can fly across countries and deliver retribution. The word rolls uneasily in your mind. Retribution for what? It's not until you're back in your apartment that you notice the small tear in your jacket sleeve. You debate mending it or just ignoring it. You settle on a safety pin. It feels like an accurate metaphor. That night, you dream of machines. Gears spinning without end, conveyor belts that never stop. Voices counting numbers in languages you don't understand. You wake up with oil on your fingertips and no memory of why that terrifies you. And yes, you still go back the next day because there's no choice. Because ration cards depend on it. Because even breathing feels regulated now. But mostly because stopping would mean asking yourself whether you're a builder or a cog, and maybe the answer would break you. The sirens wail long before the lights go out. That eerie, rising howl has become almost routine. Like a dog's distant whimper, you try to ignore until it gets close. You don't even flinch anymore. You just grab your satchel, pre-packed with the essentials, and shuffle down the stairs with your neighbors. Everyone moves like shadows now, silent and automatic. It's your 5th air raid this month. But who's counting? The shelter is damp and cramped, built in the basement of an old apartment block that probably wasn't designed for this kind of use. The concrete sweats. Mold creeps up the corners like it's competing with the fear. You sit shoulder to shoulder with strangers and friends alike, the line between the two getting blurrier by the week. There's a baby crying 2 people down, and the mother hums something tuneless, as if to cancel it out. Above, the city shudders. The bombs don't just fall, they rip. Each one pulls part of the air away from your lungs, like someone's yanking at the atmosphere itself. Dust shakes loose from the ceiling, and somewhere in the darkness, someone whispers a prayer. You don't. Not because you don't believe, but because you're too tired to ask for mercy from anyone who might be listening. Historians still argue whether most civilian shelters were ever truly safe or merely a way to keep people feeling slightly less doomed. You're not sure which one you're in. There's a small radio crackling in the corner, spitting out vague reassurances from the Reich ministry. You try to tune it out. The minutes stretch like melted candy. Your mind wanders to odd places. How long it's been since you had real coffee, whether your neighbor's cat is still alive, why your shoes always seem to be slightly too tight now. Bombs have this way of making the mundane feel absurdly important. Eventually, the all clear sounds. It's softer, like a sigh after a scream. No one claps, no one even cheers. You all just rise slowly, stiff from crouching, and file out into the ghost of your street. What used to be a bakery is now a pile of bricks. You smell smoke, but also cinnamon. Somehow, a scent from before all this has survived. You breathe it in deeply, like a dare. That night, there's no power. You light a stub of candle and heat a bit of soup over a shaky flame. You eat with one hand and hold a photo with the other. Your brother, probably still somewhere on the Eastern Front, or not. Letters come less often now, and when they do, they're cryptic. All is well is code for still alive. Barely. You try writing one back, but give up halfway through. What can you possibly say that doesn't sound like a lie? Sleep is fragile. Every creak of wood sounds like a plane. Every gust of wind becomes a detonator in your brain. You wake up at 3:17 a.m., heart racing, and you realize the candle burned all the way down. It left a wax puddle that looks vaguely like Italy. You laugh at that. Just a short, broken wheeze. But it's the first time you've laughed in days. You go outside the next morning and see chalk markings on a wall. Hitler Il's war scrawled quickly, probably by someone brave or stupid, or both. It's gone by lunch, painted over with a giant V for victory. No one says a word about it. Not to each other, not to themselves. You just nod at the wall and keep walking. Ration lines stretch longer now. You stand for 2 hours to get 2 turnips and a packet of dried peas. The woman behind you tells a story about how her aunt cooked a soup using potato skins, a shoelace, and something she claims was cabbage but smelled like fish. You chuckle politely. She offers to trade you a half bar of soap for a spoonful of sugar. You agree, before realizing you don't actually have any sugar. Quirky trivia moment. Some people in Berlin tried planting tomatoes in their bathtubs, dragging the tubs onto the balcony for sunlight. One guy even had a small beehive on his roof. Desperation breeds innovation, or at least amusing attempts at it. The authorities hand out a new pamphlet, Tips for Surviving Anglo-Bolshevik Terror. Tip number 3, suggest listening to cheerful music when afraid. You think of that as you wind up your old gramophone that still, by some miracle, plays a scratchy jazz record you found in your cousin's attic. It's American, probably banned, and it lifts your spirits more than any speech ever could. You keep the volume low, but still you dance. Just once, just a little shuffle in your socks. You miss softness, not just physically, though that's true, but the emotional kind too. A warm conversation, an unguarded hug, a hand that holds yours for no reason. Those are rationed too in their own way. Everyone's too careful now, too watched, too worn. Some days you hear that a bomb hit another shelter and killed 37 people. Other days you hear rumors that Allied planes dropped leaflets saying the war is nearly over. But you don't believe rumors anymore. Belief feels like a luxury you can't afford, like jam or silence. Still, you go through the motions. Wake up, work, hide, eat, wait. You patch your shoes with cardboard. You boil water twice before drinking it. You hide your real thoughts deep behind your eyes. And you do all this while trying to look normal. Because that's survival now. Looking normal while everything breaks around you. Morning is quieter than usual, but quiet in Nazi Germany isn't comfort. It's a signal. Something's shifted, but no one says it aloud. You walk to your factory job in silence, boots slapping cold pavement, eyes watching the cobblestones instead of the sky. Maybe you're looking for cracks you can understand. The cracks in the wall, the ones in your hands, the ones in your country's soul. They're harder to read. You step into the rationed rhythm of your day. The factory smells like rusted metal and old sweat. Your hands remember every movement before your brain does. Tighten the bolt. twist the wrench, stamp the frame. You're not building dreams, you're building weapons. Bomb casings, engine parts, something curved that looks like it could shatter the night sky. You don't ask. The foreman's eyes sweep the line like a metronome. Everyone keeps their heads down. Even talking about how tired you are feels like rebellion. It's amazing, you think, how fast silence becomes habit. There used to be jokes. Little ones, whispered while the drill buzzed too loud for anyone to hear. But jokes are dangerous now. One wrong laugh, and you could vanish. Historians still argue whether everyday Germans in the workforce truly supported the regime or simply adapted to survive it. You have your suspicions. You've seen a man promoted just for singing louder during a Hitler speech. You've also seen someone quietly replaced for coughing during the national anthem. You fake the right expressions. That's what this war demands more than loyalty. The appearance of loyalty. On break, you sit with the same people as always. Greta offers a bite of something that might be sausage. You say no. You're not really hungry. It's more that you've forgotten how to be. Carl reads the front page of the Volkischer Beobachter like it's gospel. The headlines scream of victory. The pictures don't show rubble. You stare at the black and white lines until they blur. Then he says something odd. Heil doesn't sound like hope anymore. Just habit. And he doesn't laugh. No one does. Quitting isn't an option. Jobs are assigned, not chosen. You can't just switch industries or ask for leave. You get what you're told, and you stay where you're placed. It's efficient like an axe. And if you're injured, well, there's always the less demanding tasks. Cleaning, sorting, filling out forms for production quotas no one can meet. Paper cuts and panic replace bruises and broken knuckles. You knew someone who faked an injury once, slipped and hit her head on purpose, just to get 2 weeks off. It worked. But when she came back, she was different. Quieter. You never asked what happened in between. Here's your fringe tidbit for the day. In some factories, they piped in classical music during shifts. Not for relaxation, oh no, but because Goebbels believed it kept workers in a more orderly state of mind. You can't quite decide if that's brilliant or bleak. There's a girl across the line who always hums, barely audible, as she works. Her fingers fly, even as her mouth stays shut. One day, you recognize the tune. Schubert. Something from before the war. She never makes eye contact, but the melody finds you again the next day. A rebellion in minor key. After work, you walk the long way home. Not for the scenery, most of it's bombed out or covered in propaganda, but because the straight path takes you past the SS recruitment office. That building feels like it's watching you. Every time you walk by, you feel like your shadow twitches in salute. The streetcar is late again. Fuel is being diverted to the military, so public transport limps along like an old horse with one shoe. You wait, shift your weight, and overhear two women debating whether sardines count as meat. One insists it's fish. The other says it's just too close to meat to be allowed on meatless days. You nod like this is a very serious topic. Your neighbor, old Herr Volkmann, waves from his window as you pass. He used to teach Latin. Now, he sharpens pencils for the city office. A use for everyone, he says, always with a sad smile. You think he misses conjugating verbs more than he'll admit. Back home, you try to clean. The dust settles faster than you can brush it away. Everything smells vaguely like boiled potatoes. You open a window for air and catch a glimpse of a poster peeling off the wall across the street. The face is still clear. Aryan, square-jawed, triumphant. The slogan underneath says something about destiny. You wonder if destiny ever gets tired of being used as an excuse. You eat dinner in silence again. 2 slices of black bread and something pretending to be cheese. You make tea from dried beet leaves. It tastes like earth, but warm. Sometimes warmth is enough. Later you write a letter to your cousin in the countryside. You keep it vague, just in case. Work is steady. The city is busy. We think of you often. Then you pause, you want to add, I dream of walking into the forest and not coming back. But you don't. Instead, you draw a smiley face in the margin and hope it doesn't look subversive. The night ends with a knock on the door. It's a child, barely 10, asking if you have any extra candles. You give her 2. She says, thank you, and runs off. You don't ask why her family needs them. You don't want to know. That's become your default response to everything. Don't want to know. But you do. You always do. That's the hardest part. You wake to the sound of planes. Not the roar of enemy bombers overhead. Not this time. These are German, domestic. They're flying lower today, scouting perhaps, or practicing for something none of you have been told about. You lie still for a moment, eyes on the cracked plaster ceiling, and try to count the engines by ear. 4, 5. You give up around 7. The neighbor's baby cries through the wall. It cries a lot these days. You can't blame it. If you were born into this world, you'd probably cry too. You light a candle, ration the stub of soap for another day, and wash with water that smells slightly of metal. The faucet groans. So does your back. Walking to work again, you notice something new. A row of red triangles painted discreetly on a warehouse wall. You know what they mean, and so do the others. Political prisoners. Somewhere inside, there are men and women who once handed out pamphlets or whispered at the wrong cafe table. You wonder how many of them are still breathing. You wonder if the guard standing by the gate wonders that too. You're not brave. You used to think you might be, but this city has a way of draining defiance from your bloodstream. Every small act, sharing a banned book, refusing to salute, giving your bread crust to someone who doesn't deserve it, feels like playing dice with your future. The odds are always the same. Snake eyes. The local church bells are silent again today. Not broken, just muffled. Clergy who resisted the Reich's control found themselves relocated or retired. There's an odd tension between faith and fear these days. Historians still argue whether the majority of Christian leaders were complicit, passive, or subtly resistant. The truth, like always, probably lives in the middle ground where no one feels proud. But here's a fringe fact to spice your morning coffee substitute. Did you know Hitler was a vegetarian with a fondness for bizarre herbal remedies? His doctor once prescribed him intestinal bacteria cultures made from ground-up animal organs and belladonna. You try not to think too hard about that while spreading beet marmalade on stale bread. At work, the machines hiccup and halt. Someone swears under their breath. Then a supervisor appears, tall, leather coat, clipboard clutched like a scepter. You don't recognize him. He asks questions no one answers. He marks something down and leaves. You all get back to work with twice the speed, like mice who just heard the trap click. After lunch, boiled turnips with a generous helping of "don't ask what this is." You're called aside. You're not in trouble, at least not technically. A new civic opportunity has opened up, helping catalog the belongings of a Jewish family that's been relocated. You're expected to assist with inventory. It's phrased like an honor, but you know what it really is. Looting in slow motion. The house is 3 blocks from your own. You recognize the name on the paperwork. Weissman, the tailor. His shop made your winter coat, the one you're still wearing. You stand in his empty hallway, notebook in hand, and try to pretend the scent of cologne and books doesn't make your stomach turn. You list. 1 silver menorah, 1 child's violin, 3 sets of worn shoes. You hesitate over a stack of letters tied in string. You don't read them, but you don't pack them either. You leave them where they are and move on. Outside, a group of school children marches past, chanting lines from Mein Kampf like it's a nursery rhyme. Their teacher walks alongside them, beaming. You lock eyes with one of the older boys. He doesn't look away. You blink first. Back at the factory, no one asks where you went. That's the new etiquette. Don't ask, don't answer. Just keep building whatever it is they tell you to build. You overhear someone say the Allies bombed Hamburg last night. 40,000 dead. You don't know if it's true. You don't know if you want it to be. The black market is alive tonight. In a back alley behind the bakery, you trade a bundle of firewood for 2 eggs and half a bar of soap. No one speaks. The currency of this city is quiet understanding. Your friend Lotta shows you a newspaper clipping later, folded carefully into her bra to avoid suspicion. It's from a British leaflet dropped by plane. It shows a photograph of Auschwitz. You stare at the chimneys. They look like any other factory. That's what haunts you most. Maybe it's fake, she whispers. Maybe it's not, you answer. Historians still argue how much the average German knew about the death camps. Some say it was an open secret. Others insist it was hidden too well. But here, in this moment, you know one thing. Lotta is not sleeping tonight, and neither are you. The blackout siren wails later than usual. You fumble for your coat and candles. Down in the basement with the others, the air tastes like dust and regret. An old man tells stories about the First World War, about horses and trenches, and a time when poison gas was the worst thing they could imagine. A woman knits. A child draws swastikas on the wall in crayon. No one tells him to stop. After the siren fades, You climb back up to the surface. The moon is hiding behind thick clouds. You walk home slowly, ears still ringing. The city smells like scorched paper and overboiled cabbage. Back in your room, you fold the extra blanket over your feet and lie still. Outside, a dog barks once. Then silence again. You close your eyes and wonder what it would feel like to live somewhere where silence means peace. But that's not here, not tonight. The next morning greets you with smoke on the horizon and a sky smeared with a brownish hue of cold soot. It's the kind of dawn where the sun forgets to show up entirely. You pull on your boots, the ones with newspaper stuffed in the soles to plug the holes, and head out into a street that feels like it's bracing itself. You know the feeling. There's a poster pasted crookedly on the brick wall beside the butcher's. You've seen dozens like it before. Stylized eagles, triumphant slogans, maybe a smiling soldier shaking a farmer's hand. This one is different. A photo. Grainy. It shows a row of women with shaved heads behind barbed wire. You barely catch a glimpse before someone tears it down. Another leaflet from the Allies, probably parachuted in overnight. You don't say a word, but your pulse skips all the same. Someone saw you looking. At the train station, you notice the uniforms have changed. More black coats, more dogs. The usual rhythm of the city, the pretense of routine, is wearing thin. And yet, the trains still run, and people still crowd the platform. A woman behind you is carrying a suitcase with a broken handle. She doesn't speak. Her child has an ID tag pinned to his coat and wide, dry eyes that don't blink often enough. You look away. Today's destination? A munitions depot. You're part of a rotating crew being shuffled from one essential labor site to another. Inside the factory, the air is thick with gunpowder and sweat. You operate a conveyor belt carrying bomb casings, dull metal cylinders that rattle like bones when they clink together. You know that what you're helping build will end up in someone's home, someone's limbs, someone's story. And yet, there's this eerie detachment. You're not doing this because you believe. You're doing this because saying no would end your story. Full stop. Historians still debate whether everyday Germans acted out of ideology, fear, or apathy. In your case, it's a cocktail of all three, with a twist of helplessness for garnish. The supervisor wears a monocle. Yes, really. You didn't think people still did that. He speaks in clipped phrases and chews licorice like a nervous tick. Every hour on the hour, he shouts a morale quote. Every bullet you build brings us closer to victory. Or, your hands are the Reich's heartbeat. You try not to roll your eyes, but you do it anyway. Old habits. Lunch is boiled grain. Sort of. You don't ask what kind. You share a bench with a woman named Gerda, who was a ballet teacher before the war. She tells you she used to teach Swan Lake to rich girls. Now she calibrates firing pins. Her fingers still move gracefully, though, even when greased in machine oil. You ask how she sleeps at night. She says, badly, but with purpose. There's a rumor floating through the break room. The allies are close, really close. The sort of whisper that moves faster than truth, but somehow feels more accurate. Someone says Dresden was hit. Someone else says the Eastern Front is folding like a cheap deck chair. You don't know if it's optimism or terror you're feeling. Maybe both. A peculiar little story trickles in from a colleague. Apparently, Himmler once ordered a secret project to build a sun gun, a giant mirror in orbit that could focus solar rays into a death beam. You choke on your coffee substitute. Fringe? Definitely. But somehow, in the current climate, it feels disturbingly plausible. And yet, your takeaway is simpler. Somewhere in an office with velvet curtains, a man had time to dream up sci-fi weapons, while children in Berlin were digging through rubble for potato skins. On your way home, you pass the local youth detachment practicing formations. Kids, some still with milk teeth. Their wooden rifles clack rhythmically like drumsticks on coffin lids. The leader, barely 16, barks orders with forced bravado. You wonder what's louder in his head, the voice of the Reich, or the tremor of fear he can't quite suppress. Back in your flat, the radio crackles. A news bulletin announces heroic German advances and the resistance of a 1,000-year Reich. You switch it off. The walls are thin. You hear your neighbor coughing again. That same dry, stubborn sound you've been hearing for months. You bring her some hot water and dried herbs, just in case they help. She thanks you with a touch on the wrist that says more than words could. There's a package on your stoop when you return, unmarked. Inside, 2 potatoes and a hand-knitted pair of socks. No note. You sit down on the edge of your bed and try not to cry. Kindness in these times hits you like a slap because it reminds you what the world used to be. As you light a candle, you think of your cousin who vanished 2 years ago for making jokes about Goebbels. You think of the old Jewish man who played violin in the square before they took him away. You think of the boy who used to deliver milk and then didn't, and still, you sleep. Somehow. Because your body insists. Because even in hell, dreams still sneak in. Tonight, yours are strange and heavy. You're on a train, but the tracks melt under you. You're floating. You wake with a jolt. It's just past midnight. You sit up and listen. No bombs, no sirens, just the sound of breathing. Yours, your neighbors, the cities. Faint, but still there. By morning, the sky feels different. There's a strange clarity in the air, like the city took a cautious breath while you slept. You head out again, past the bakery with its closed until further notice sign, and down to the corner where the bulletin board hums with more slogans than truth. This time, something new catches your eye. Typed, not handwritten. A list of ration card updates. But beneath that, an announcement. Volksempfänger radios must now remain on at all times between 7 and 10 p.m. You don't need a historian to tell you what that means. The regime's grip is faltering. If people were still listening willingly, they wouldn't need to mandate it. As you pass an alley behind the bookshop, what's left of it, you see 2 kids playing with a busted bike frame. one wheel spinning freely, the other long gone. They're giggling, not because anything is funny, but because the sound of joy itself is rebellious now. You offer them a piece of hard candy from your coat. It's old and slightly sticky, but their eyes light up like you've given them diamonds. One of them salutes you. You wince. Your shift today is cancelled. No explanation. Someone shrugs and says rail problems. Someone else whispers about sabotage. You don't ask. You've learned that questions are the most expensive things you can carry. Instead, you take the day to visit your aunt in the outskirts. She's not really your aunt, just someone who used to feed you when your mother was sick. She lives in a cottage with boarded windows and a vegetable patch that's half frozen. She offers you a mug of watery broth and some crusty rye bread. You pretend it's delicious. Her radio is broken, which feels like a blessing. Over lunch, she tells you about a priest who was arrested for mentioning mercy too many times in his sermons. It's always the small words that get you, she says, buttering her bread with trembling fingers. The dangerous ones, like love, like truth. She's been hiding a boy in a cellar. You didn't ask. She didn't tell you, not exactly. But she lingers too long on the trapdoor when she fetches the carrots. You know. You make a silent promise not to know. On your way back, you pass a pile of burnt books. It's not new, but someone scribbled something in chalk beside the ashes. They try to burn thoughts. You stare at it longer than you should. A man with a bicycle slows beside you, sees it too. Says nothing, just rides on. Historians still argue whether passive resistance helped or merely prolonged suffering. You're not a scholar, but you know this much. The real resistance was never the loud stuff. It was moments like these, quiet, risky, and tender. The kind that didn't make headlines, but kept the last shreds of humanity stitched together with frayed thread. You swing by the train station again, out of habit. The platform's nearly empty. A train squeals in from the east, doors hissing. Only one passenger steps out, a woman with a face like crumpled paper and a suitcase covered in paint. Not graffiti, flowers. Someone tried to turn it into something beautiful. The suitcase, not the war. That's impossible. She sees you staring and smiles, just briefly. It's the kind of smile that says, I made it. You're still here. That's enough for now. In the evening, you go to the community center. Not for propaganda this time, but because someone whispered there might be a secret concert. The building's half dark. It's stage dusty. No uniforms. Just a boy with a violin and a woman with hands like wings who sits at a warped piano. They don't announce themselves. They just start playing. It's Bach. Or maybe Mozart. You're not sure. You're too busy trying not to cry. The notes drift through the hall like incense, curling into the ceiling's cracks, slipping past your rib cage. For 12 glorious minutes, the Reich vanishes. There is only sound and breath and the steady thrum of something no government can kill. Later, someone shares a joke, a real one. It's about Goering and a pig. It's not even that funny, but you laugh anyway. Because laughter, here, now, is a muscle worth keeping. You hope the Gestapo doesn't have informants tonight. Or if they do, that they've remembered how to laugh too. As you walk home, the wind picks up. You hear dogs barking in the distance and the distant thrum of planes overhead. You don't flinch. You don't pray. You just walk. Past broken statues, past empty stores, past places that used to mean something. You count your steps. You breathe. You exist. And somehow, that still feels like an act of defiance. Inside your flat, you light a candle, not because it's dark, but because you want to. You warm your feet by the stove, read 2 pages of an old novel you read 10 times already, and let your mind drift. You think of Gerda, of your not aunt, of the boy in the cellar. You think of the woman with the painted suitcase and the chalk message beside the ashes. And for a moment, just one, you imagine what this city might look like in 50 years. Will anyone know about your life? Will they remember how you hummed forbidden songs while peeling potatoes? Or how you shared sugar cubes in secret like they were holy relics? Probably not. But maybe, just maybe, someone will say, there were people who stayed kind. You settle into bed, tuck the candle out, and let the quiet take over. Not peace exactly, but the pause before dawn. It'll have to do. You wake to the knock. Not a polite knock. Not the neighbor borrowing flour kind. It's that heavy, echoing kind, where each rap against the wood feels like it's trying to knock loose your spine. 3 sharp hits. Then silence. Your blood goes cold. You wait. You listen. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it wasn't your door. Maybe. Nope. There it is again. Slower this time. A kind of warning or invitation. You don't answer. Not right away. Instead, you slide your boots on without tying them and glance at the little window near the ceiling. You could slip out through the shared stairwell if you're quiet. But then you remember what happened to that man down the block last month. The one who ran. No one runs twice. So you open the door. It's just one man. Civilian coat, brown shoes, hat tucked under one arm. He doesn't introduce himself. He just nods and says, "You'll need to come answer a few questions." Not an arrest, not yet. You follow him down to a car that smells like paper and rust. The drive is silent. You don't ask where you're going. You just watch the buildings blur past and try to memorize details like you're leaving forever. Turns out it's not a prison. It's not even a proper office. It's a repurposed school building on the edge of the district. The windows are boarded up, but the desks are still there, lined up like little graves. Someone's erased the blackboard sloppily. Chalk dust lingers in the air. They sit you down, offer water, ask where you were last Tuesday evening. You tell the truth, or at least your version of it, the part that won't get anyone else in trouble. They nod, they write, they frown thoughtfully. Then, what do you know about the radio at 17 Brechtstrasse? You shake your head. Too fast. Too obvious. They notice. One raises an eyebrow. Now, here's the strange part. They don't press. They just hand you a paper to sign. Some nonsense about confirming your awareness of public listening regulations and send you on your way. Historians still argue whether the regime's late-stage surveillance machine was precise or simply overwhelmed. Some say it became a theater of fear, interrogations designed more to remind you they were watching than to extract real information. You're inclined to believe that, especially when, just before you leave, one man says, "Tell your neighbor to fix that antenna." Wouldn't want the party to think they're ignoring the broadcasts. Your neighbor's dead. You buried her son last week. You walk back slowly, tracing a longer route home. The air is sharp with wood smoke and something acrid you can't place. On the corner, a boy no older than 10 is handing out tiny leaflets folded like fortune cookies. You take one. It says, "Your silence is their fuel." He looks at you as if daring you to do something with it. You eat it. Later that afternoon, there's a scuffle in the square. Not a fight exactly, more like a lopsided protest. A few women shouting about bread, about missing husbands, about ration cards that only ever get lighter. The police stand back at first, then they move in, not violently, just with that calculated pressure that makes you forget how to breathe. You don't shout with them. You don't run either. You just watch, hands in pockets, eyes lowered, learning. By dusk, the square's cleared. A poster goes up over the bricks. Unity is strength. Loyalty is life. You wonder if the glue's still wet. You resist the urge to spit. You duck into a tavern you haven't visited in months. It smells of cabbage stew and mildew. The radio's playing something orchestral, just loud enough to satisfy the rules. Everyone pretends to listen. No one's really listening. The bartender recognizes you. "You've lost weight," he says. "That's fashionable these days, right?" You laugh. You don't mean to. It just slips out, raw, startled. He pours you a tiny shot of schnapps and doesn't charge you. Just taps the rim twice and moves on. You find a seat near the corner, back to the wall. From here you can see the door, the radio, and the mirror behind the bar. Old habits. A man at the next table is talking softly to a woman in a green scarf. He mentions trains. Not the local kind. The other kind. His voice is tight, flat, like he's trying to file the edges off his words. You hear the name Theresienstadt, and your throat goes dry. You finish your drink, you leave. You never look back at them. On your way home, the streetlights flicker. Not a blackout, just the power grid reminding you that it's barely holding. You pass by a checkpoint that isn't staffed. That's new. You don't trust it. You walk a block out of your way. Your neighbor's door is ajar when you return. The one with the boy who loves birds. You knock gently. No answer. Inside, it's quiet. Too quiet. You step in. The boy is curled on the couch, fast asleep, a dead pigeon in his lap. His mother's coat is gone from the hook, her boots too. You tuck a blanket around him and and shut the door softly. You don't need to ask what happened. You just hope she made it to the train. Or didn't. Depending on which one it was. You spend the evening fixing the latch on your window. Not because you're expecting someone, but because it's something your hands can do. Something that makes sense. You boil water. You check the candle stash. You reread that same dog-eared chapter. You try not to think about the radio, or the knock, or the way silence is louder than music lately. Then, just as you're about to turn in, you hear it. Someone on the rooftop. A soft thud. Then another. You don't panic. You wait. After a minute, the footsteps move on. Or vanish. You sit by the window a while longer. The moon is low. A dog howls somewhere far away. And you're still here. The morning creeps in like a pale ghost. Soft, cold, and reluctant. You wake to that brittle silence that only comes after a long, nervous night. The kind of silence that feels artificial. You half expect to see fresh boot prints in the frost on your windowsill. You don't. The city is still standing. Somehow. You dress in layers even though the sun is out. It's January or maybe February. Honestly, time started to blur into seasons and then into hunger. There's no bread today. The bakery window has been empty for weeks, but they still open it every morning as if hope is part of the ritual. You see an old man on the corner selling buttons. Just buttons. You can't tell if it's a joke or a kind of slow collapse. Either way, no one's laughing. You give him one cigarette. He hands you a shiny brass button like it means something. Maybe it does. Today you've been asked to report for community inspection duty. That's a fancy way of saying, walk around and pretend to be vigilant. Technically, you're helping the war effort. Realistically, you're one more body in a system built on pretending not to notice the smoke rising from the edges of the map. You patrol for hours through streets so familiar you could navigate them blindfolded. And in some ways you do. You ignore the stares from shuttered windows, the twitchy curtains, the whispered German that stops when you come close. You're not proud of this uniform, but it's a second skin now. Too late to peel it off. You meet a man named Weber halfway through your shift. He's older, with a limp and a bad cough. He says he used to be a teacher. Says the children were the hardest part to let go. He doesn't say what happened to them. You don't ask. Instead, you both share a cigarette and watch a group of Hitler Youth march past. Their boots are too clean. Their eyes too bright. It's like watching children play with matches in a house soaked in gasoline. Weber mutters, "They're already older than we ever got to be." It's hard to argue with that. Historians still debate the level of ideological conviction among ordinary citizens by this point in the war. Were most of them believers? Survivors? Hypnotized? Or just too tired to resist? In truth, you suspect most people were some blend of all four, depending on the day and what they had for breakfast, if anything. At lunchtime, you cut down through the market square. A woman is bartering wool socks for soap. A man is quietly selling tiny drawings of Berlin before the war, postcard-sized glimpses of a vanished world. One shows the zoo, another the old opera house. You buy one with your last 2 pfennigs and tuck it into your coat. Later at home, you'll stare at it for a long time. You'll imagine standing in that square with clean shoes and full lungs and no sense of doom pressing against your ribs like a second heartbeat. You'll imagine lions roaring and people laughing, and you'll almost believe it was real. You spend the rest of the day gathering fuel, bits of broken chairs, splinters from fences, anything that will burn without drawing attention. There's a saying now, firewood is currency. You could almost start a bank with what you find. That evening, you try the radio again. Static. Then a voice. Then silence. It keeps doing that. Like someone's fighting to break through. Like the truth is stuck behind a locked door and someone's jiggling the handle. You hear the word Stalingrad. You hear retreat. You don't hear celebration. At supper, if you can call it that, you boil cabbage and pretend it's stew. You read an old letter out loud, even though the ink is fading. It's from your cousin in Munich, dated 1941. It talks about books and gardens and how people believed the war would be over by Christmas. You fold it carefully and put it back in its envelope, even though you've memorized every word. There's a knock at the door. This time, just a neighbor, asking if you've seen her cat. You haven't. But you give her a bit of the boiled cabbage anyway. Not because you can spare it, because she's crying. And it's the only thing you have to offer. That night, as you lie in bed, you think about endings. Not just war endings, but all of them. You wonder what you'll say to your children if they ever ask about this time. You wonder if you'll even want to speak at all. And you promise yourself something quietly, silently, that you'll remember. That if this all crumbles, you won't erase it. That you'll carry it like a stone in your pocket. Small, heavy, undeniable. Because survival isn't just about breathing. It's about bearing witness. And now, as the last flickers of candlelight vanish behind shuttered windows, the streets of wartime Germany grow quiet, distant, like a fading memory. The curfews, the checkpoints, the whispered names, those shadows can't follow you here. Your breathing slows, your jaw unclenches. The past drifts further and further away, like a train slipping into fog, its whistle long gone. You're not rationing food. You're not scanning skies for bombers. You're not choosing between silence and survival. Not anymore. Instead, you're safe, tucked beneath warm blankets in a room untouched by searchlights or slogans. Just you, your breath, and the hush of a world at rest. Let the cold cobblestones and grey corridors fall away. Let the soot and secrets dissolve. They belong to another time. One that tried to swallow hope but couldn't quite erase it. You carry none of their guilt, none of their burdens, only the quiet strength that comes from understanding what others endured. So rest now. Let your thoughts blur at the edges. Let the stories become soft shapes in the distance. Important, but no longer urgent. The war is over. The night is gentle. And you are allowed to sleep.